Hello, and welcome to Spring with the Seasons Leadership Podcast, where we are awakening to new energy, creativity, and the opportunity to elevate our thinking. Throughout the season, we're going to continue to bring you actionable advice to inspire you to explore new possibilities, clarify your vision, and start a new plan to improve your leadership and life today. Thank you for joining me, Debbie Collard, and my co-host, Susan Ireland. As certified leadership coaches and co-founders of Seasons Leadership, we share a vision to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard. And this drives us to partner with teams, individuals, and organizations to increase and accelerate leadership excellence, a specific skill that helps leaders successfully achieve high levels of performance. You can learn more about this at seasonsleadership.com. I'm sure you've experienced plenty of examples of mediocre or even bad leadership. So join us in making positive leadership and leadership excellence the norm rather than the exception. By listening and engaging in the discussions featured on this podcast, whether between Susan and myself or with guests, you help bring leadership excellence to the world. So thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, self-care.
Yeah.
So
well,
Susan, kick us off.
Well, what does self-care have to do with leadership?
It has everything to do with leadership, right?
Yeah.
When I'm talking to coaching clients, it always comes up all the time. And they're talking about, I did this for this person, I'm working this many hours, and I'm all focused on this, and my kids needed me, my spouse needed me, blah, 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 right? And what I often don't hear is, where's the you time in that? True. And if you're not giving time to yourself and taking care of yourself, how can you continue? How can you sustain being there for other people?
It's true. And you know, we know it's important. My clients that I talk to, we talk about it a lot too. I talk about it with my coach, but we know it's important. It's intellectually, we understand it, but we just don't do it. We deprioritize ourselves because we think something else is more important. Or I know for me, I can't say that, you know, people will say, well, don't you think you're worth it? And I think like, well, of course I think I'm worth it. But I also think I'm okay. I'm strong enough. I can do it next week. You know, it's, I make excuses maybe for it.
Yeah, I'm handling it. It's all going to be fine. And I just got to push through. But you have a great analogy that you always use for why self-care is important. So I'm going to let you share that one.
Well, are we talking about the airplane?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Big surprise that we would be talking about airplanes.
Yeah, I know it. And this one, we've heard this before, you know, if you are in an airplane and they have an emergency and the oxygen masks come out, you know, you hear like, put on your oxygen mask before you help the person next to you. Like if you have a child, we all know that, you know, because if you pay attention to everybody else, nobody's going to have any oxygen. I mean, that's the idea behind that. Right. But we still don't do it. That's what I mean. We know it intellectually, but we still don't do it. So
it's a decision, right? We're making a decision, even if it's unconscious, that we're deciding not to do self-care, not to focus on ourselves. And with every decision comes consequences.
It's totally right.
What are the consequences of not practicing self-care?
Right. Well, for me, overwhelm, tiredness, I start to make mistakes. You know, it could be just little mistakes at first, but then which causes rework. It goes on long enough. I get sick. I have poor judgment. You know, have you ever had that? What was I thinking? Or it seemed like a good idea at the time?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. Absolutely. Everybody does that, right? And it's when you start feeling run down and you get run down, then you're just opening yourself up to a whole nother can of worms to deal with. And then you can't be good to anybody because you're forced to do self-care to get yourself well again. Right?
It's like, it's like our body talks to us like, oh, you don't want to take a break? Well, let's just see, I'm going to give you a heart attack or something, you know, I mean. We don't
Yeah.
do that.
It can go from minor to catastrophic, but you don't know. But it's all consequences of not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And some people think, well, I'm not affecting anybody else by that. I'm just affecting myself. But you are affecting other people, especially if you're a leader.
Mhm.
What kind of leader will we be if we are not at our best? If we're running on empty and we're pushing ourselves to the limits, burning the candle at both ends, whatever analogy you want to use, what kind of leader are we going to be? We're not going to be a good leader. You know, you can see it in others easier than we can in ourselves, but let us just hold up a mirror to you today.
Right.
Here's what it looks like. When you're overwhelmed and you're tired and you're burned out, you're not present. You can't be present with other people. And that means your perspective is likely narrowed and foggy at best. And so we start to rely on biases or our go-to or our comfort zone instead of being able to tap into the wealth of all the opportunities out there. And we're also no fun to be around. You know,
Right.
I've had leaders where it's like, oh boy, avoid this person. They are not in a good space today,
Yeah.
right? And it's probably because they're not taking care of themselves.
Right. Right. You know, that boss that you say, like, what kind of day is it for him or her? You know, it's like,
Yes.
that's been in movies, but I've also experienced it. I think we all have, you know, and you know, really, it's not inspiring. You're not getting any loyalty from the people who work for you. You're not getting their best thinking. You know, it's all this weird drama that's happening. And really, it could it be stemming from they're just not taking care of themselves and how they impact so many other people?
Absolutely, it could be. I had a boss, I experienced what you talked about more than once, but one of the bosses had a medical condition. And if he didn't eat right and get enough sleep, you did not want to be around him. And this guy's making decisions for a large organization that affects lots of people.
Yeah.
And so you want them to be at their best. And leaders, no matter what level they are, need to hold themselves to a higher standard. And they are expected to be held to a higher standard because of that influence they have on the people around them. You know, they're affecting other people's lives and livelihoods with how they show up. So it's our own responsibility as leaders for how we show up. We have a lot on our plates. We have lots of things to figure out. People ask a lot from us.
Right.
So comes down to you have a responsibility to show up at your best.
Right. And that's, you know, that's something that for me, I take seriously now when I realize it, like, it's my responsibility to show up in the light that is most positive and helpful to get things done. I mean, even at work, but also with my family or my friends. You know, I have a lot of influence on the people around me. I mean, we all do. And we can impact people's lives. Like you said, at work, it's lives and livelihood. It's like, what kind of day are we like spreading? The leadership shadow, I think, goes long and far. And we need to realize that. And I think just that one thing can maybe push us over the edge to, like, okay, maybe pay attention. Maybe I am tired. Maybe I need to take a break, walk around the block, whatever.
So what are some ideas that we can give leaders for what they can do?
Right. Well, first of all, accept the responsibility, recognize it. Don't blame everybody else.
Well, so-and-so made this happen and then I couldn't help it because I couldn't take care of myself. Right.
Right.
We've all heard it, maybe done it.
Or yeah, even blame, like, the economy is so bad. I've got to work, you know, it's sometimes also, it's like a badge of honor to work so hard and, you know, to push yourself. I didn't, you know, I only sleep 4 hours a night or something, you know, it's like, you know, the stories people tell each other sometimes. The other way is, I think, because we're gonna face stresses and pressure, and there's going to be
Absolutely.
times when we get overwhelmed. So we need ways that we can recover. So and not waiting too long until you do hit that burnout stage. Some pressure is good and motivating. I have a way that I incorporate forcing functions into my calendar so I make sure that I get things done. An example, if I have a party, I'll make sure that I clean up my house. So
Good plan.
that's a fun forcing function. But too much pressure or unrealistic expectations will impact health and clear thinking and judgment and all of that. So it's really important for us to recognize when it is getting too much, and then having strategies that work for us to reduce the pressure. That will be good for us, but also help us increase our resilience, which is so important in today's world.
So you mentioned having strategies that work for us. Give me an example of what that would look like.
Yeah. Well, first of all, everybody's different. So it's really important. There's not like a one magic fix. But something could be as simple as taking deep breaths, really deep, breathing deep into your diaphragm, in and out. I like the box breathing method. The Navy SEALs did that. It's simple. You can Google it. Basically, it's breathing in the pattern of a box where you inhale for 4 breaths, hold it for 4 breaths, exhale for 4 breaths, hold that for 4, and then inhale. So you're just going around in a box, and that will slow down everything, get that oxygen into your bloodstream and your brain, and it'll calm you down, which is great. So that's simple, and you can do that anywhere.
Yeah, and I love that reminder. I mean, breathing's essential to life, right? So being purposeful about remembering to breathe. It also has other benefits, doing a breathing exercise or making sure you're taking a few deep breaths. It can calm you down. It can help you clear your mind of any clutter. It can help prepare you if you're about to give an answer on something. And if you weren't feeling well and about to give a knee-jerk response, if you pause and take that breath, that's going to allow you to give a response that's more purposeful.
Exactly. That's a simple one. And it's amazing when we're under stress, we don't do that. We breathe shallowly or even hold our breath. So it's something to practice. Another thing is just to get up and walk around the block, or take a little lap around your office or your home or something, just to get up and get the blood moving. That's simple. Do you have any suggestions or tricks that you do?
Well, I have both of those are great ones, and I practice both of those. Not as consistently as I would like to, but I do try to practice them. There is another one that I try to always incorporate, and that is, we all live out of our calendars, right? We got so many things going on, appointments, and it takes up our day. I, at the beginning of each week, do what I call a weekly review. I see what's coming up for me, and I build in breaks where I can go out and take a walk, where I can just breathe for a few minutes, where I can do some stretching in between appointments that I might have. So it's just being purposeful about building in that space for me, that me time, as I call it.
Right. So tell me this though, Debbie, because I have done that before, and sometimes I just blow through those things. How do you have the discipline to actually do it?
Well, sometimes there's those weeks. We all have those weeks where it's just back to back to back to back. And I know from listening to my own body and the indications my body gives me that, all right, you've screwed up. You've blown right through the brakes. You just need to stop and take a break now. And it's about listening to your body and reading the signs, because I know that if I ignore those signs and don't get back to it and do that break or put in another break, an artificial break, that I am going to get sick or something worse, because something's got to give somewhere.
Right. I like that idea about space too, because not feeling, if we're 100% packed, something's gonna come and it's gonna overflow. It's the same thing about, I have an organizer and she said, don't fill up anything to 100%. Drawers, shelves, your garage, your closet, keep it about a quarter empty or space, so you have a chance to breathe and allow for new things to come in. And that means, though, something has to go out. But I think it really is true. I mean, it's when I think of my calendar, I think of some of the ways my calendar looked while I was in the corporate world. I mean, I didn't have a space for lunch or to go to the bathroom many weeks on end. And it's true, other things come in and then something falls off. You just don't have room to make any different decisions.
As a coach, I work with lots of different clients, and this seems to be a common theme among them. I'm too busy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm so busy. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's just go from meeting to meeting to meeting, or task to task to task. And so I was talking with another coach, a colleague of mine, and he said this. He said, I love it. I love it when a client says to me, I don't have time for that. And I say, okay, now we're getting down to business, because everybody has the same amount of time.
Right.
We all have 24 hours in the day. We all have the same amount of time. You do have the time for it. You're not making time for it. So when you decide to make it a priority, this thing that you want to do, self-care in the case we're talking about, right? When you decide to make it a priority, then, as you pointed out, Susan, something else is going to fall off the list, right? Something's going to have to give, because you still need to allow wiggle room in there, or space of some sort for unexpected things that come up. But he said it's all about prioritization and making time for that. And this might be a good place for us to pause for a second and do a quick ask of our listeners.
Yes. We want to ask our listeners to join us on the Seasons Leadership Patreon. Patreon is a web-based membership platform that makes it easy for creators and entrepreneurs like us to reach more people with great leadership information. The site also makes it easy to pay for a subscription that delivers the content to you so that you can access it on your own schedule.
And we have a couple of levels, but Gold is our premier membership tier, and that's priced at $25 a month. Patrons at this level get access to our exclusive Lessons in Leadership column, featuring experience and insights from Dr. David Spong, our resident seasoned leader and two-time Baldrige Award winner. You'll also receive access to our Leadership Elements series, which focuses on different foundational elements of leadership each month. And as we build this Gold community, we're going to offer quarterly live events and other special perks. The Gold tier is appropriate for leaders at any level who want to invest in themselves and improve their leadership skills.
So if you want to get leadership insights and information to achieve leadership excellence or support our mission, please visit patreon.com/seasonsleadership. That's Patreon, patreon.com/seasonsleadership. We hope to see you there.
Thanks for that, Susan. And we were talking about how to work self-care, strategies for working self-care into your schedules as leaders. And you have done a lot of work and talked a lot about something that I'd like you to go into more depth now, and that's tiny practices. What can you share with the leaders about tiny practices?
Right. Well, I'm going to do one of our leadership elements on this, so we can talk about it more. But Tiny practices are just small things that you can start to incorporate into your daily life, and it only takes a minute. So it could be breathing deeply, and you can do that, the habit stacker kind of idea, where if you brush your teeth, brush your teeth is one of my anchors. So if I brush my teeth, then maybe right after it, I take a couple deep breaths just to kind of set my day. That would be one thing. Another thing is maybe while I'm making coffee, I could, as the water is starting to boil, I can take a couple deep breaths. So it's that idea. So it becomes natural, and it's kind of a habit. And you just do this tiny thing that has a big impact on the rest of your life. So we talked about this before. You could walk around the block, like between meetings or something like that. I also think something to increase our well-being or just a joy in life, I could say, like, do a daily text to say thank you to somebody who's done something for you, either recently or even something in the past that you are really grateful for. I also like, Debbie, your practice. I think it's a tiny practice because it only takes a minute, but creating a love me drawer.
Oh, yes. And this is going to sound redundant. I love my love me drawer. The reason it's called a love me drawer is because I initially came up with this and created it at the time when we had more physical in the office type of stuff, but it doesn't have to be a drawer. It can be a OneNote on your computer. It can be a stack of papers on your desk. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just a way to collect in one spot the things that you've gotten that are about love and care. And what I mean by that is, say you got a note from somebody that you really respect, or a family member or a friend, and they say, Debbie, you really helped me with this week because blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If it's something that's a compliment to you, put it away in that one spot. Today, I don't use a drawer anymore. I use a journal, actually, and I've got all kinds of notes stuck in it. When someone says something to me, I even take the time to write it out on a sticky note and slap it into that journal, or write it directly in the journal. And the reason that I collect all these things is because everybody has bad days. Even me, I'm a pretty positive person, but I got bad days too. And if I'm having a bad day, then I can go to that one spot, that journal in my case, and I just flip through a few pages, and it helps remind me that I've been helpful to somebody, that I've helped them to do what they want to do, or get out of their own way, or just made a difference in their lives. And that in turn reflects back on me and makes me feel better about myself. So it is a form of self-care. I really practice that all the time. And I encourage all of my clients to do the same, to create that. One other thing that came up for me when you're talking about with your morning coffee and doing the breathing, one thing that I didn't even realize till we were talking about this right now, that I have a tiny practice, because it's become so ingrained as a habit, I don't think about it anymore, but I do stretches. I do stretches when I'm waiting for my tea to steep,
Okay.
or when I've even been caught doing stretches while I'm brushing my teeth. I don't recommend that multitasking. But I do stretches when I got a minute here or there, and it just helps me feel better, helps me feel better about things. So
it's true. I mean, I think too, the tiny practices don't have to be physical. They could be meditating for a few minutes, that kind of thing. But I do think incorporating body and movement is actually so helpful for us, because so much of our life is in our heads, so like, let's embody this whole experience here. And it's really it really gets us connected to who we really are. I still have trouble. I mean, I have to admit it, I fall into my old ways. And I was talking to my coach about this. And he had some really interesting advice, which I thought this is probably something that is maybe going to make a difference to me for this time. But he said, imagine who you are, Susan, at your best. You know, you're feeling good, connected, at ease, you're feeling confident. And he said, really think about it. How do you feel? And I said, I feel good. I feel like great. This is how I want to be in the world. This is how I want to show up. And he said, how do you like that person? And I said, oh, I like this person. And he said, well, do you think other people would like this person as well? And I said, yes, this is like somebody people want to be around, you know, not like that stressed out person that we talked at the beginning. So he said, imagine that person and that version of you as someone you're interested in, like maybe that you want to date that person, you know, and if you did, like, what would you do? Would you prioritize spending a little time with that person? You know, getting to know them better, maybe sending them a text, you know, spending a few minutes with them just because you're really interested in being with that person. And I said, yeah, I see that. He said, you would prioritize your time. You would do something, you would spend time with that person versus somebody else. Try to think of yourself in that way and spend a little more time and care with yourself.
I love that advice. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it did make sense. It did make sense to me because small things do matter. And just taking a moment to reconnect with myself is a tiny practice that will make a huge difference, I think, overall.
One other thing I'd like to share with our listeners today is if you're feeling overwhelmed, sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed in the moment, you can't see a way out. And it's important to take a pause and then maybe write down what kinds of things you need to do, what steps you need to take. The world's not going to come to an end if you take 5 minutes to just do this. And you can read more about that in a blog we wrote on feeling overwhelmed on www.seasonsleadership.com. So to wrap up today's discussion, leadership excellence doesn't happen when we're overwhelmed, doesn't happen when we're tired, burned out. In fact, the exact opposite can happen. And that's when we as leaders are often seen as mediocre or bad leaders because we weren't taking the time for ourselves first, putting that oxygen mask on ourselves first. And so when that happens, we're negatively impacting those around us, not positively impacting them. Right. And as Susan said earlier, there's no magic fix. You got to figure it out for yourself. What is it for you that you can do? Take one of the things we've shared with you today, or come up with your own practice that's going to help you do self-care. And self-care looks different for everybody. And depending on the amount of time you have, you can do different sorts of self-care. Like I can go out for a walk with my dogs, or I can take a bubble bath. Whatever self-care it looks like to you, just make sure you're investing in yourself, and it will help increase your leadership excellence.
Right. Remember that leadership shadow. We can't avoid it. It's either going to be positive or negative. I don't know if it's ever neutral.
I don't think it is.
I don't think so. And it's our responsibility to show up like we want to. Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us for the Seasons Leadership Podcast. We hope you take these words of excellence with you on your leadership journey. Remember, no matter what level or role, you can become more than you are today, and the world needs you. When you fulfill your unique purpose, you strengthen the organizations and the communities in which you live and work. And so it's so important to remember to take care of yourself. Thank you for being a part of our positive leadership change. And join us in making excellent leadership the worldwide standard by subscribing to our community on Patreon. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/seasonsleadership to become a member and join the conversation. We would love to We would love to connect with you as we build our community of excellent leaders. And tune in next time for more leadership excellent conversations and insights. Until next time, we are sending you positive vibes for new energy, creativity, and opportunity to elevate your thinking during this season of spring. Thank you.